The story begins in the rolling hills of the Sussex countryside, in a place called Beachbourne, just as the old world is starting to show its cracks. It's a setting that feels permanent and peaceful, but there's a tension underneath the surface. We meet Dr. Trupp, a man with an ambitious, almost idealistic project. He wants to build an open-air hostel at Cowgap. His goal is to combat tuberculosis and what he calls the softening of the younger generation, a fear that the comforts of modern life are making people weak. This project is funded by a mysterious mortgage held by a widow, Mrs. Luckner, and it sets a theme that runs through the whole book, the struggle between the structured civilized life we try to build and the primal, sometimes brutal instincts that lie just beneath it. While the doctors and the upper class are worrying about the health of the nation, the real drama is unfolding in the domestic lives of the people in the village, specifically the Caspar family. We meet Ruth Boam, a woman who carries a heavy, unspoken secret. She has married Alf Caspar, a man who is kind and well-meaning, but who is often described as weak or passive. Their marriage is a shield, though not everyone sees it that way. The community of Beachbourne is quick to judge Ruth. Her mother-in-law, Anne, views her as a social stain, and Ernie's brother, Alf Caspar, is a much more dangerous presence. Alf is a man driven by ambition and a predatory instinct for social climbing. He's a man who sees every vulnerability as an opportunity. He begins spreading rumours about the legitimacy of Ruth's daughter, Alice, implying the child is born of something scandalous. But the truth is much more complex and much more tragic. The story eventually reveals that Alice was the product of an assault by a Captain Royal. Ernie, rather than being a man who simply lacks spine, actually showed a profound kind of courage when he stepped in to marry Ruth and protect her from the fallout of that assault. He took on the burden of her past to give her and Alice a chance at respectability, even if it meant living under the shadow of suspicion. As the years go by, the domestic struggles of the Caspars begin to mirror the growing instability in Europe. The peace of Sussex is being eaten away by economic hardship and shifting social roles. Ernie loses his job, and suddenly, the traditional roles of their marriage are flipped. Ruth, once the woman who needed protection, becomes the fierce provider. She steps into a role of strength and authority, driven by the sheer necessity of keeping her family fed. This shift creates a new kind of tension in their marriage. A quiet, simmering friction between Ernie's desire to be the man of the house and Ruth's reality as the one holding everything together. While the Caspars struggle to survive, Alf Caspar is busy climbing the social ladder. He is a master of opportunism, using his knowledge of Ruth's past to manipulate the local figures in the village. He's the kind of man who thrives in the gaps between the old rules and the new reality. He moves through the social circles of Beachbourne, using blackmail and charm to secure his position, always looking for the next rung to step on. At the same time, the political landscape of England is changing. The village is no longer just a collection of farmers and local gentry, it's a place of ideological warfare. We see the rise of radical socialism, personified by a man named Joe Burt. Joe is a charismatic and intellectually formidable agitator who speaks to the growing unrest of the working class. He's a man of intense passion, and that passion isn't just political. He develops a complex, unspoken attraction to Ruth. This creates a volatile psychological triangle. You have Ernie, the passive protector, Alf, the predatory opportunist, and Joe, the intense radical. Each man represents a different way of relating to Ruth and to the changing world. As we move closer to the outbreak of the Great War, the sense of impending catastrophe grows. The softening that Dr. Trupp feared is being replaced by a much harder, more violent reality. The social order of Sussex is fraying. We see the tension between the old guard, represented by figures like Colonel Luckner, who is preoccupied with the looming German threat, and the new, chaotic energy of the streets. There is a sense of a tidal wave coming, something that will sweep away the old ways of life and the personal grievances of the village alike. The tension reaches a breaking point in a series of confrontations. Alf's predatory behaviour toward Ruth becomes more overt, and his attempts to exploit the growing war fever for his own profit lead to public scandals. The community is deeply divided, split between those gripped by patriotic fervour and those who find themselves leaning toward pacifism or radicalism. In a pivotal moment of social upheaval, a legal examination regarding the registrar's records finally settles the long-standing question of Ruth's marriage and the legitimacy of her child. It is a moment of vindication for Ruth. her character and her marriage are officially recognized, clearing her of the whispers that have dogged her for years. But the victory is bittersweet. While she has regained her social standing, she is left feeling more vulnerable than ever, standing in a world that is about to be torn apart. When the war finally arrives, it doesn't care about the private dramas or the social standing of the people in Beachbourne. The mobilization is sudden and overwhelming. The personal and the political finally collide completely. Alf Caspar, the man who was once seen as weak and passive, finds a sudden, unexpected sense of purpose. In the face of the ultimate crisis, he discovers a dignity he didn't know he possessed. He joins his battalion and departs for the front, moving from the quiet domesticity of Sussex into the brutal reality of the war. The story concludes with Ruth standing on a hill in the Sussex countryside. She is pregnant, and she is no longer the vulnerable woman who first arrived in the village. She has been forged by hardship, by poverty, and by the struggle to protect her children. She has become a pillar of strength, a woman who has weathered the storm of social scandal and economic ruin. As she looks out over the landscape, she finds a sense of peace, even as the world enters a period of unprecedented destruction. The individual has been transformed by the crisis, finding a resilient, quiet power, just as the old world is being swept away by the avalanche of war. When we look at the book as a whole, it's interesting to see how Alfred Ollivant uses the landscape of Sussex to reflect the internal lives of his characters. There is a recurring tension between what he calls the brute and the avalanche. The brute represents those primal human instincts, the predatory nature of Alf, the raw passion of Joe Burt, the basic survival instinct in Ruth. The avalanche is the unstoppable force of history, the movement of war and social change that no single person can control. The novel is essentially about the collision of these two forces. The characters are all caught in the middle. We see a massive shift in class and respectability. The old order, the men like Colonel Lucknow and the archdeacons who believed in a fixed hierarchical society, is being challenged by a new order. This new world is being built by men like Alf, who use ruthlessness to climb, and by men like Joe Burt, who want to tear the old structures down entirely. There is also a very clear exploration of how gender and power change during times of crisis. At the start of the story, the power dynamic is traditional. Ernie is the man who should provide and protect, and Ruth is the woman who needs his shield. But as the war approaches and economic reality sets in, those roles are forced to reverse. Ruth's strength isn't a sudden transformation, it's a slow, hard-won evolution. She becomes the protector, the one who maintains the family's dignity and survival, while the men are either struggling with their own identities or being swept away by the political currents of the time. Ultimately, the book suggests that while the avalanche of history, the wars, the political revolutions, the massive social shifts, can destroy the structures of civilization, it also has a way of stripping away the superficialities. It forces people to find out who they actually are. For Ernie, the crisis provides a sense of duty that his quiet life never required. For Ruth, the struggle provides a spiritual fortification. The one woman of the title isn't just a description of Ruth, but a testament to the strength of the individual character when faced with the overwhelming forces of a changing world. The personal struggles of a small village in Sussex end up serving as a microcosm for the entire human experience at the dawn of the 20th century, a period of profound loss, but also one of profound, if painful, transformation.